Hello, everyone. The book we're going to be talking about today is a new release. It came out on January 5th, and it's one that a lot of people were looking forward to, myself included. We're going to talk about what that book is and how much I enjoyed it here in just a minute. But first, I want to remind you that there's a link below in the description if you want to purchase my book of short horror stories. It's called The Things That Happen at Night, and it's only $3. So check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Now let's get on with the video. All right, so our book we'll be talking about today is called The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. A lot of people have been looking forward to this one. Other of his books have been received both critically and fan-wise with great fanfare, including The Cabin at the End of the World and A Head Full of Ghosts. Both of them are very excellent books, and if you haven't, you should go back and familiarize yourself with Paul Tremblay's other books so you can become familiar with his voice and the way he writes. And that will really help you, I think, enjoy this one. This book, I want to say right up front, is not a bloody or gory read. It's very much a character-driven, unsettling story where we as the reader never really know what's happening. I'll try to explain the best I can without spoilers here. Well, basically, this book is written in first person by a man who's writing a memoir. So what we're reading is basically what he calls a memoir. He has a disease, he has scoliosis, he has other things wrong with him, he has heart problems, his back is all hunched when we first meet him as a child, back in his memory, which is the basis for his memoir here. And he's very much alienated from everyone else. You know, he gets bullied a lot in school and things of that nature. He just has a whole host of problems, let's put it that way. As an extracurricular activity, he decides to start what he calls the Pallbearers Club. And it's basically a group of volunteers. He's trying to get people to volunteer to be pallbearers for people's funerals that would otherwise be not attended or not attended well. People who don't have any friends or family, the forgotten, the lost among us, serve as their pallbearers at their funerals, give them a sense of dignity in death, that kind of thing. Of course, it's also it's kind of morbid for high school kids, you know. But he goes ahead and does that, and that's where he meets our other main character. And this book is going to switch between these two characters' points of view in their different perspectives. Like I said, it's very much a character-driven book. But he meets Mercy. That's her name in the book. In his book, anyway, that's her name, Mercy. And they become fast friends. She likes him. They like hanging out. This is not a love interest kind of thing. They are just really good friends who have each other's backs. And she kind of encourages him to step out of his shell. She's very brutally honest with him. She'll tell him the things that she sees that are wrong. He needs to come out of his shell. He needs to quit acting like he is. He needs to quit feeling sorry for himself and be more confident and that kind of thing. And he slowly changes over time. He slowly comes to accept what she's saying, that she comes from a place of sincerity, even if she can be a little brash in saying it. But basically, this book is about him writing about his time from a teenager until he's an adult. And the core of it, the basis, is that in his mind, he thinks she is a vampire. Now, not a traditional vampire. She doesn't sleep in a coffin. She doesn't turn into a bat. She doesn't have long fangs coming out. But he believes that there's a curse, that she is a vampire in the fact that whenever she's around people, she siphons their life force from them, making them sicker and sicker and more ill over a period of time until they eventually succumb and they die. And throughout the book, we're going to see his reasonings, his things that happen, events that happen, that will lead us to believe this is absolutely true, because it can't just be a coincidence, all these things, right? Well, she's writing notes in his manuscript that we are privy to, disputing some of his claims. She is very adamant. She thinks it's silly. She explains all the reasons he has for thinking she's a vampire. And so I really liked this two narrative story in this book. I liked it because at one point I was thinking, well, he's right. He has to be right. Look at his proof. Look what he's saying. If it happened the way he said, what other conclusion can you come to? And then immediately after, we'll just read a short paragraph or something from her and saying, no, that's not the way it happened. He's misremembering. Here's what happened. And then you just don't know what to think. Is she a vampire? Is she not a vampire? Is he actually the monster? Did he actually become a vampire over a course of time because of her? And did that cause other things to happen in the book, which you're going to read about? Like I said, I don't want to give you too many spoilers. But this back and forth and this not knowing throughout builds a sense of tension and builds a sense of surprise, because you never know what's going to be revealed, or even if it's going to be revealed. The main character's name in this book is Art Barbara, but it's said throughout this book that's not the name. That's not really his name. He gives this girl the name of Mercy, and she insists throughout some of her interjections in his manuscript, which is what we're reading, that is not her name. And she is suspicious of his motivations for lying to people, as she tells us that this is not true. This is a novel, not a memoir. He's making things up wholesale. So throughout, we vacillate between believing him, believing her. Maybe he's just having a mental breakdown. Maybe it's a mental condition forcing him to think either she's a vampire or he's a vampire. And we never really know until the very, very end, when something will happen that will still leave it open to interpretation, but kind of gives us a sense of what was going on throughout the whole book. I'm a huge fan of this kind of horror book. Not the ones with a lot of blood and guts, not the one with a lot of jump scares, but the character-driven ones where we dig deep inside the psyche and the thinking of the characters and show us how sometimes their thinking processes don't make sense to a normal, I guess you can say, person. And this book does this better than almost any book I've read. But that, just because there's no blood, that does not mean it's not a horror book, though. Like I said, all throughout, this book is unsettling. It's very, very creepy. And it's almost like, well, you know how horror movies will have jump scares. It's the anticipation of that jump scare. Even when you know it's coming, the anticipation that builds and builds and builds until the creature jumps out from behind the wall, the music gets real loud, and everybody screams, right? This book is like the lead up to a jump scare almost all the way through. You get that nagging feeling that something's not right. You can't put your finger on it. You don't know who to believe. Is he having a mental breakdown? Could she really be a vampire? But there is no jump scare at the end. That's the only difference. But that feeling you get when you know a jump scare is coming, that's the feeling I got throughout this book. And it stuck with me for a while after I read it. In fact, I got the book one day, and the next day I started reading it, telling myself the biggest lie we all tell ourselves: I'm only going to read for an hour or two, and then I'm going to put it down. I finished it in one day. Several hours later, and in need of a shower, I was finally finishing it up because it is that good. I could not put it down. I wanted to see where this goes. I wanted to see who was telling the truth, if anybody was telling the truth. And there were other options available. At one point, I thought maybe Mercy is just a separate part of his personality. Maybe he's like writing to himself, because we're never told specifically that they're two separate people. It could have just been a personality of his. Maybe he's a schizophrenic. Maybe he's already died and maybe he's just going through this process. Maybe this memoir is his process of reliving his life, trying to make sense of what has happened up to his death. That was a possibility. And I'm not going to tell you what it actually is, but I was very, very impressed with this book. I loved it. I highly recommend it. If you're more of a fan of literary horror fiction rather than just splatterpunk or blood and guts, you are going to love this book. You love the character-driven stuff, you're going to love this book, because this one's all about those two characters and how they interact and how the relationship develops and eventually falls apart and leaves it up to you to decide why that happened, who's really at fault, who's telling the truth, who's not. Maybe they both are telling the truth, maybe neither of them are. And I love that kind of, it's a thinking man's horror book, and I really, really appreciated that. I will leave a link down below to Amazon if you want to purchase it on there. And also I'll leave a link down below to my book of short horror stories, The Things That Happen at Night. Pick it up for $3 and I hope you like it. Also down below are links to my social media. Join me on Twitter and Instagram for more horror goodness. And as always, thank you for taking some of your time, spending it here with me. I really appreciate you guys watching. And until we meet again, keep reading spooky, my friends.